All right, welcome everyone. I will call this meeting of the Personnel Administration Committee to order. Today is Tuesday, August the 2nd, 2022, and we've got some housekeeping things before we launch into our agenda. The first item is that today's agenda has been amended. So if you go to the county's website, you can pull the amended agenda, which is still accurate. But if you look at the original agenda on the website, you can see the full packet, which has all of the documents that all of our department heads have issued. The second item that we need to do for some housekeeping for this body is to address the policy that we have about attendance, and I'd like to recognize County Council for some information about that.
So the attendance policy would require that if a person appeared electronically, they would only be allowed to do so consecutively unless they had an exception. And so I believe Councilor Hawk has attended the May meeting, the June meeting, and the July meeting electronically. So I just needed to verify if Councilor Hawk had an exception that would fall within the category to allow virtual attendance beyond the 2 consecutive meetings.
I think we made it clear at that earlier July meeting that I was waiting on results as to whether or not I would move forward with an x-ray after I damaged my foot. Regardless, if you would rather me not participate today, I'll be happy to just be rather than being a participant, I'll just be a listener. Works for me. I don't care
I
one way.
think it's fine as long as we state for the record that that was the case.
That was in the record of the last meeting and as part of the minutes.
And I think it needed to be incorporated into this meeting since you're virtually attending. So I think as long as we stated it, we're fine.
All right, well, thank you for that housekeeping item. And now we'll get back to our amended agenda. We'll start with our first item of business, which is from the auditor's office. And we have Bree Gregory here with a review of a WIS recommendation memo for a job description. So Ms. Gregory.
Did you take attendance?
I did not take attendance. Here, I'm launching into the agenda. All right, let's see. Do we have, let's see, Marty Hawk, are you here?
Yes.
McKim?
Yes.
And I'm here. All right, thank you for that reminder, Councilmember McKim. Ms. Gregory, what's going on with your item on our agenda today?
So thanks to Michelle's help, we were able to get the information back from PAC with their recommendation. It fell right, or this is for the assistant financial director position, of course, for everyone listening. We discussed this a couple times now. So this is just to assist me and my department with the various tasks that we've added, in the last several years, so our department is a little less overwhelmed. So this will help with that, hopefully make things a little bit more timely, but we feel we've done an okay job anyhow. So anyhow, moving on to this current position, Pat came back and recommended a Pat A, which is exactly in line where we wanted it to be. Just to mirror kind of our plan within the department. So that's good news. They also provided an official job description with their stamp of approval and said it was ready to come back to you for discussion or questions.
All right, Ms. Gregory, thank you. Before I turn it to my council colleagues, Council Administrator Michelle, anything to add to Ms. Gregory's presentation?
No, the WIS recommendation did come back as we anticipated at a Pat A.
All right.
Which falls in line with the rest of the reporting structure within the auditor's department.
Excellent. I'll turn it over to council. Council, do you have any comments or questions about this item?
Just looking at the org chart, I mean, it seems pretty straightforward and does seem to correspond with how you've got other how the other areas of the auditor's office are structured. So finance would be, so you are Pat D, and then there are 2 Bs, and then this position will be And all are, all are non-exempt except you. You're exempt.
Right.
The others, including this proposed position, are not.
That's correct.
And that org chart that Councilmember Kim just referenced is now being shared on the screen. And I think, is that correct that the new position is highlighted in yellow? Is that correct? Are there any other council comments or questions at this point? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we forward the Assistant County Financial Director position and classification to the County Council with a favorable recommendation.
A second.
Hearing a motion and a second, and with someone on Zoom, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
motion passed unanimous.
All right, we'll see you at County Council.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, next on our agenda, we have Commissioner Sam Crow here from the Jail Correctional Center talking to us about, or starting a discussion, excuse me, regarding clarification of duties for the program coordinator position. Commander Crow, what's going on here?
Thank you for having me. I guess there was some questions. Maybe I didn't adequately describe the job position. This past week, I had an opportunity to speak with Judge Dekoff about this position. And one of the examples that I gave her was the VITAL program. So prior to COVID, we had been working with Monroe County Public Library to get VITAL back into the jail. And for those that don't know, VITAL is a literacy program through the library that helps those people that have a low literacy rate work that literacy rate up. So we're working with VITAL again right now, trying to get that started in the jail. But this coordinator would work with organizations like the library and groups like VITAL to determine those inmates that had needs when they came into the jail. And the reason that I use VITAL is because there's a very low literacy rate in the jail. So this person would work with VITAL. VITAL would help these inmates with their literacy rate, work with them weekly. When the person gets out of jail, this person, the coordinator, would continue to work with VITAL, would work with this inmate specifically to make sure that they had appointments, they knew where to go, they knew when the meetings were or the lessons were at the library or any other place. So it would kind of help continue that program that we're starting in the jail, or that they're starting in the jail, outside. We don't house everybody in the jail for long periods of time, but if we can start working on some of those programs with some of the inmates and a bigger selection of inmates, rather than just our therapeutic blocks, I think we're going to have a better chance to help more inmates and maybe reintegrate them back into the community to where they can do things that they're able to help themselves. And I just use VITAL because that's one of the big problems that we have in the jail. Recently, we've been using the ServSafe, or doing the ServSafe certifications. So Nikki Ferris, who's in charge of our kitchen, has been working with restaurants just on her own outside in the community to try to get those inmates that have taken the ServSafe, that have worked in her kitchen, interviews or jobs when they get out of jail. So again, this coordinator, instead of Nikki doing it, this coordinator would be working with restaurants, with other organizations within the community, would work with probation. By no means do we want to take away anything from probation or from the reentry courts or any of the other program courts that are already being done. We want to collaborate with them and work with them. So I think that's what this coordinator is going to do. Okay. Hopefully that explains it a little better. We've got people in the jail that are kind of helping out with this. So we want one specific person that's going to be able to do this and free up some of those other staff members. And I think ultimately it's going to help with the reintegration into the community. And Judge Decock wanted me to stay away from the word reentry, so it's not confused with reentry court or things that are already going on within the county. So
Okay.
hopefully that explains a little bit more of what we're trying to do.
Council Administrator, Council, do you have anything to add to this discussion before I turn it over to Pat?
I guess I have a clarifying question for Commander Crowe. Last time we talked about this person, also being a grant coordinator and writing grants, is that also going to be incorporated in this position?
Yes. Yeah, that will be one of the duties that this person has, is to look for money in other areas. That will help fund programs in the jail and possibly even help fund some programs outside of the jail once they get out. I've had the opportunity to go to 2 conferences in the past 2 months, 3 months. And this is one of the hot topics right now. And there's a lot of money out there for jails. You just have to know where to get it and have to have the knowledge to do the grant writing. And that's something that I don't have, and that's something that no one else in my staff really has. So that's one of the key things about this. And hopefully, at some point, we can find enough money that it would pay for this position or pay for additional positions to help with this.
Are you looking at adding this position in the 2023 budget, or what is your time?
I would love to be able to do it as soon as possible. I think the sooner we get it started, the more progress we can make with it. And, there's a shortage of staff in the jail right now. I think there's enough money in our budget that we can go ahead and fund this for the remainder of this year, and then incorporate it into next year's budget.
I think the only other comment that I have is not a clarifying question for Commander Crowe. Thank you for that information, but more directed to PAC members. And one consideration I think that you might take into account when thinking of this position and adding it to a 2023 budget is, although I recognize that Sheriff Swain is currently the sheriff, we should be working with him and Commander Crowe. Here in a few months, you're going to have a new sheriff, and I don't know how this position plays into their reentry or reduction of recidivism plan. I think both candidates have put forth a plan, and I don't know how this would coordinate with them.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to turn over to PAC now. What comments or questions do you have in this discussion? Yeah, Mr. Kemp.
Well, so I know that the question of whether or not this is a re-entry position was a big source of confusion. And so I'm glad you were able to talk with Judge Decock about that. One of my questions is, I guess, so let's say that this position is created, and the coordinating programs in the jail is kind of a no-brainer to me. That there are programs in the jail, and that you're pulling staff out who aren't necessarily appropriate to be doing that kind of work and should be doing other things to be able to coordinate programs in the jail. But let's say this position is successful and starts getting people outside the jail into program or continuing programs. How long does that support last? I mean, it seems like your numbers of clients would just grow and grow and grow as people cycle through the jail and you get them out into programs. It seems like their case management portfolio outside the jail would grow unconstrained.
Well, that's why I think there has to be a good collaboration between the jail and other departments like probation. Probation already has a lot of reentry things going on. And like I said earlier, we don't want to step on their toes. We want to collaborate with them and work with them. So we'll have to be able to come up with a handoff period. Possibly get this person to their interviews, get them to their jobs, get them to their classes, and then hand that off to probation. A large percentage of the people that leave the jail go out on probation. And then you're going to have those few that don't, and hopefully they're, once they get the job established or get on their feet a little bit, then they're going to be able to go ahead and take their own steps forward.
Okay.
And really, I don't have all the answers for this because we don't have this program going on right now. I've talked with other jails that have something similar. But we haven't got everything worked out yet.
So administratively, where is this? Remind me, is the paperwork at list for classification right now or what?
Yes, it has been forwarded to WIS, and just because there was some confusion on what, we just asked them to put a hold on moving forward with, creating the job description until we figured out if we wanted to move forward with the current information that we had. So I didn't know if we needed to add more, that kind of thing, so that it's included, or if we wanted to wait until we got information with the new sheriff, that kind of thing. So,
I mean, that's a tough one. I'm not a huge fan of waiting for the new sheriff, just because, we're always electing new people in Monroe County, and we could basically just run in circles trying to anticipate what or wait for new elected officials to come on board. I do want to make sure that whatever WIS is reviewing is actually accurately represents the vision for the position. And I guess it would be nice for Judge Decoff to, I don't know whether that means weigh in writing or weigh in on the record on this, because I do think that the coordination between the jail and the justice system is really important. So I don't know if that's something that Judge Decoff would be willing to, to write, or, we need to know that courts and probation would be willing to work with this position, that they would find it useful also. I guess that's my only concern.
Councilmember Hawk, I see your hand.
Yes, that's sort of when you're speaking of the courts weighing in on this, that's part of what I mentioned at the last meeting, that it was important to know that the courts support this and believe this is the right direction to go, knowing full well that it is the sheriff that is in charge of the jail. So it has to be a collaboration between those two elected groups of people. But as far as waiting until we get a new elected person in there, I mean, we'd be facing that if we start that as a precedent. Well, that every time we knew we were going to have a new auditor, we couldn't hire anybody. If we every time, whatever a department that's ran by elected officials, and so we wouldn't want to stop a good program from moving forward because there's the normal changeover of leadership. So, and then if the new sheriff coming on board decides to run that jail in a whole different fashion, that will certainly be something up to him, but you can't wait until you've got a new sheriff before you start. You can't just stop running the jail while we're waiting on that to happen.
All right, any other comments? And I guess my question, not seeing any other comments to you, Michelle, is the recommendation from the council administrator at this point that we work with WIS to update language, or are we in a position now where we need to rewrite a job description?
I think what I would like to do is, since we want, the courts, probation to weigh in on this, to take the information that Sam has submitted to us to them and say, do you see anything, that you would like to add, subtract, that kind of thing, and get them their information as soon as we can. And then that way I can get that submitted to WIS, and then they can proceed with that. So I think Molly said she was willing to reach out to the courts part of it.
Yeah.
I did give a copy of the job description to Judge Decoff last week, so
Okay.
she does have that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's all I would want to see.
Yeah, I'm happy to reach out to Judge Decoff.
Excellent.
Okay.
Pack, are we okay with this plan? Ms. Hawk, sound good to you? Ms. Hawk, can you hear us okay?
But I couldn't hear you just then. Could you
Okay.
just take it down long enough for me to hear you?
Did you hear the recommendation that came from Michelle and
Something about going and having the judge and so forth, but when I talked with the sheriffs earlier about this, I did try to reach you, Sam, and we kept missing one another. I felt sure that information was going to be shared back and forth, and so if that's been sent out to them, if we intend to move this forward and get something in place and moving forward right away, I don't know how much longer we want to continue to delay this. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I
it's,
think that's the idea though, is that staff can take, I think the intent of PAC has been made clear. And so if Molly can reach out to Judge Decoff and just, and apparently Sam has already given the job description, so she's already
Right.
been briefed, we can let staff proceed without another PAC vote.
Yeah. Once Molly can confirm, all I have to do is just send them saying, hey, here it is. Add this or move forward.
Well,
let's,
wonderful.
let's try not to delay it too. Just the grinding of going through the motions, let's get it moving. If it's a good plan, it's a good plan.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
We'll see you soon.
All right.
All right, Pac, we're moving on to item number 4 on our amended agenda, and that is with Ms. Kelly Whitmer from our Parks and Recreation Department, talking about a request to add a position to the 2023 budget. Walk us through this agenda item.
Excellent. Marty, can you hear me?
Yes,
Excellent. Just yell if I'm not speaking
Thank you.
loudly enough. The park board voted in June to recommend to increase the park staff by 1 maintenance technician for 2 reasons. 1, our duties are increasing exponentially. And 2, we need a highly technical person. Many of our part-timers, we do not allow on heavy machinery. We do not allow them to trailer. We do not, do a lot of things. We do plumbing, electrical. And these are very difficult things. And if you look at what I wrote down here, what our employees do now, they can't be at 2 places at once. And basically, because if one person is trying to fix the tractors, well, guess what? He's our trailer guy, basically. And we're not doing that. If you need someone to do electrical, we have one gentleman who does that. So we are in desperate need of someone with high skills, because these employees do not go and mow and pick up trash. They are doing very dangerous activities sometimes, but they have to be competent. And to be honest, this is the most difficult year in decades to hire part-time people. We don't have a high bar right at the moment. It's show up to work. And did you notice something? And do you know how to use your cell phone to call us that you've noticed something? I mean, we're at that level right now with some of our part-time people. And they're, for instance, we have an articulating brush cutter, which is basically a glorified bush hog on a skid steer. I don't know if you know what those is. It's a big machinery. It's very dangerous. Those are kind of the activities that we're asking this new person to do. And they would probably have skills in carpentry, plumbing, heavy machinery operation.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Michelle, anything that you'd like to add to this agenda item?
No, this is just part of our practice that when a department asks for an additional person, we're not asking for the creation of a job description. It's a person to the budget that it comes to PAC first
Excellent.
and get their feedback.
Glad to see we're following protocol. Pac, any questions or comments for our Parks and Recreation Department? Mr. McKim.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand so I'm looking at the org chart here. And so you show that you have this is the park maintenance technician that's highlighted in magenta on the, sorry, org chart. It's highlighted in magenta. Is that the position you're talking about?
This doesn't look exactly right. But we have park maintenance technicians. We have 4. This would be the 5th one.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, how's that? There's a 5 there.
Okay, so 4 full-time.
Yes,
Maintenance technician
and this would be the
positions.
5th.
This would be, okay.
Yes, that would be
And
correct.
for
Sorry,
the-
I didn't look at it at first. So
For those watching, we're about to pull that org chart up onto the screen for you, so you can see this as well. There it is.
And just out of curiosity, the ones that are listed as part-time, does that part-time usually mean seasonal? Do they work like full-time during the summer
Well,
and then?
this is interesting. The definition in the personnel policy handbook never seems to fit our staff. So for you to answer your question, they're hourly, seasonal, yes.
You have true seasonals, which not most of our staff.
Correct, they're seasonal, but that's not really in the personnel policy handbook, we have to be classified as this.
Okay, but the 5 or the 4 with the 5, the 5th desire is actually
Full-time,
year-round.
year-round.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And they are quite busy in the winter too. There's not a downtime for us now.
Kind of the what, maintaining equipment. and
We're maintaining equipment, we're, rebuilding all of our stuff. They may take a vacation once in a while. Summer's hard for them to do that. And with the greenways, that's 7 days a week now.
Sure. Sure. Any other comments or questions from PAC? Ms. Hawk, I see your hand.
Yes, when I looked at this organizational chart earlier, what I was trying to figure out if this person is also over the part-time people. I see the assistant park superintendent is, then it goes down to the parks maintenance technician. So then the question is this going to be, if you change the job description for this one, would that also be changing it for all of the ones that are in that same category? And if so, I mean, or do you just want to hire another one, just add it to your budget? What?
We just want to add another one and add it to the budget. Nothing has changed about the job description.
Well, okay, so I don't understand why you would need to come to PAC for that. That is a budgetary question, and that is up to the entire county council. I appreciate looking at your department's breakdown there, but I don't see that this is a PAC decision. I don't.
And Marty, can I answer another one of your questions that you had? Because you may have it as a regular counsel. Org charts are good, but in practicality, what we do is that any full-time person organizes our hourly people. So if they're doing something wrong, or if they're not doing it, they will say, stop here, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Do they report directly to that? But in reality, all part-time people need to
Right.
listen to all full-time people, but then it goes up the chain like that.
Right, and you know what, that's real life, isn't it? That's
Real life.
You're right. But once again, I think when want to add a new person, and without changing the job description, you want one more of the same. I believe that is a council budgetary decision, but maybe I misunderstand that.
I thought Kim had a comment about that.
We have always, you guys have asked for anybody that wants to add a person, not just a job, because it's a job description. You have asked that they come to PAC to get verification or pre-approval saying, yes, you can add that position, another position to your budget. Yes, it is a financial decision, but we've always come to PAC to get that pre-approval. So
Well,
that's why we did it this way.
Here's where I think the difference is. If they're asking for a new person that will have different responsibilities, and then they need to give people an opportunity on the PAC to say, look, have you thought about moving around your job requirements and duties or something of the sort? But that's not what's being suggested here. However, whatever anyone wants to do with it's fine. I'm just going by, that is the way we've done it for years and years and years.
Well, thank you for your comments. And if I could just chime in here, I really appreciated the amount of detail you put into your request here. And I just want to read a little bit from that, if I could, and just underlines just how important and how much the parks are growing here in Monroe County. Over 500 acres, 5 parks, soon going to be 6, 3 greenways with trailheads, splash pads, 7 playgrounds, 11 shelters, 2 group shelters, 1 climate controlled shelter, parking lots, 4 basketball courts, 1 fishing pond, 2 other ponds, a drone zone, an 18-hole disc golf course, 7 restroom buildings, 4 maintenance buildings, 1 caretaker or day camp building, 1 dog park, community garden plots, and 12 athletic fields that convert into 35 soccer and lacrosse fields. That's amazing. So I'm really excited about that detail you put in there. And I think it really underscores how like this position is needed. So I think at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
All right, well, given Councilor Hawk's concerns about whether this is the role of PAC aside, I think it doesn't hurt us to make a recommendation. So I move that we forward the Parks Department's request to the council for a full consideration with a positive recommendation.
There's a second. Hearing a motion and a second, I'll ask staff to call the roll on this question.
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes,
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
motion passed unanimous 3-0. So can I ask a clarifying question? So we're going to be doing, we've got a couple more on here. So that I know for next year is, how do you want me to handle this? Because, apparently I'm not doing it correctly and I want to do it correctly.
That's one person's opinion.
So, and I just want to make sure for the record so that I know moving forward, what is it we want or the council wants to know about adding additional positions, not creating job descriptions?
Well, do we have PAC procedures in writing?
I
Not
cannot.
that,
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Councilmember McKim.
I'm just asking what we have in writing. If we have PAC procedures in writing, because whatever it is, we should put this in writing.
Right.
I
So we
did,
don't have to have this argument.
well, and I've been working on that, and this is one of those that we have not clarified on how we want to move forward with this. So that's why it's like, if I know from today, then I'll know what to do and creating those procedures
And then the council can vote on the whole thing and
during, and that's what I was, my reasoning was that you guys would know ahead of time and you give council that recommendation. Then when you go to budget sessions, it's already been discussed. You guys have already talked about this position and you've given your opinions that, yeah, it is needed. And then when council goes and says, hey, we see this in the budget, it's an additional position, it's already been talked about. That's what I thought we were doing this for.
I can definitely see both sides. I guess, I mean, there are only a small number of departments that have lots of people in exactly the same role. So it's not that broadly applicable.
No,
I mean, I guess my inclination would be to go with Councilor Hawks, just so we have enough to do on actually reviewing changes in descriptions. So my personal opinion would be if it's literally just increasing the N of an already approved existing position, then it probably just does go to council. It's a budgetary issue. But
Okay.
that's just my opinion. One.
I would tend to disagree. I think it's important to have PAC to be this additional sounding board for changes and just allow that extra level of transparency. But where I think I come down with the other two counselors is when that starts to impede on efficiency, then I think that we need to take that into account too. So I'm somewhere in the middle, I guess.
okay. No, that just kind of gives me an idea because I just want to make sure that I was just covering all the steps and making sure I was getting everybody the information that they needed. So
Ms. Whitmer, would you like to weigh in on this?
But I have a clarification. Kim's been just fantastic helping us through this. Kim also told us to take this out of our budget until we talk to you. So now that we've talked to you and it's a positive recommendation, shall today we put this back into our budget? And then we send it to you. Okay,
mhm.
we will put it in the correct lines.
Excellent. All right. Any other thoughts or comments on this? I think might be a good time to move on.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Hawk, go ahead.
Right, I just wanted to say that we have to think about not just our time, but of course, the PAC's time is limited. But we also have to think that our department heads, their time is very valuable right now. So for them to have to attend yet one more meeting and so forth, if it is strictly a budgetary consideration. But however you folks want to do it, that matters not to me.
All right, Ms. Hawk, I think I'm going to give you the final word on this. So if there's nothing else, let's move on to item number 5 on our amended agenda. which means that we have the Youth Services Bureau here and Mr. Lewis Malone representing to talk to us about a request to add 20% of a position to the Lit Special Purpose Fund for 2023. Mr. Malone, welcome, and talk to us about what's going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us today. This is another one because we were going to put it into our budget. We are coming to PAC to have this conversation. So the federal government did change made a request for us to change our non-competing continuation application that we filed this spring, and then they followed back up with us this summer, basically saying they were only willing to pay for 80% of the counselor position after we had previously written in the grant that they would fund 100%. And that is what had occurred annually since we've had this RHY grant. They've always paid for 100%. And just this year, the Office of Grants Management said that it was more appropriate for them to fund 80%. And so that is why we are coming to you. This is one of the counselors that serves children who stay in the shelter. We did add 2 counselors to do more community-based work this past spring. Thank you so much for that funding. But this is a position going back to Binkley House Emergency Youth Shelter. We have 2 counselors focused on case management for the kids who are staying with us in the shelter. And so we would like for this to be this other 20% to be able to be aligned to be created, so we could pay 20% of that person's salary out of Lit Special Purpose, if at all possible, to keep our full complement of counselors.
Thank you, Mr. Malone, and I'm going to kick it over to Michelle for any comment or question here.
This is the same scenario that we just did with the park. So since it is totally fiscal, then I believe we just need to move forward with having them add it to their budget, and you'll see them at budget sessions.
Mr. McKim, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, so in a way, this is actually even a more extreme version of the last debate, because this isn't even a new person, a new slot for a new position. This is literally just moving 20% of the budget from a grant fund to a tax fund.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would not even under. Yeah, I don't see this as a PAC issue at all.
Okay.
Actually,
I agree.
Put this in the budget and we'll move forward.
And
Yes, Ms. Hawk.
as those requests come in, they need to be kept separate. So that when we get ready to do our budget, we'll see all of the changes, the larger changes that we're making if you add a whole person or a fourth of a person. So we'll see where our changes are, but that's not a PAC position.
And Kim's always really good about highlighting what the changes
Right.
are.
Right.
So we will absolutely rely on that analysis.
So my understanding then of what PAC is saying at this point is that we do not need a motion. And I think that's, Ms. Kim, is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Malone, thank you for joining us. Thank you for talking to us about this position, and we'll see you at the next council meeting.
All right, we will put it into the budget and look forward to talking to you in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
All right, PAC, let's move on to item number 6. This is the council office. We have Michelle and E with us today. We're going to review and discuss revisions to the midpoint hiring policy, which is also known as Resolution 2015-46. Michelle, E, what are we talking about here?
Our current resolution for midpoint hiring is rather outdated. It refers to personnel that is no longer with us or even in the structure. And some of the practices that we have developed since that change, along with E and myself, we want to incorporate into this new resolution. I've also had Molly weigh in on it with regards to the legal side of it and get clarification. With that, we have talked about, and some of departments have asked, which is a totally council decision, is whether the midpoint, which we consider midpoint as being the 3-year, or if we want to be able to have a more flexible way of doing compensation with regards to if we want to have another layer of maybe going up to the 8-year, as well as incorporating currently employed part-time employees and giving them that level of being able to have a compensation increase. So this resolution revision is kind of encompassing all of that. And so we want, and I think we said we would start with PAC first to kind of get your opinions on this midpoint resolution, because the final revisions and everything always comes back to PAC with regards to, is this process working? And that was in the original resolution that the PAC, the HR director would, report on how's this process working. So that's why I'm starting with PAC. It will need to go to the entire council, but I wanted to kind of get your opinions first on these revisions. So
E, do you have anything to add to that?
not right now.
All right, does council have anything to add to that?
Other than I did make a few revisions to the document that I think is in the packet, but the revisions are really just in wording. And for example, I changed like current part-time to internal part-time. There are no substantive changes, and I can resend that to PAC members.
Mr. McKim,
Yeah, I guess I'm actually not finding it in the packet.
yeah, I don't see it in the
That's
packet either.
It's in the Dropbox.
Yeah, it's not in the packet.
Yeah, so I can't, I don't have any comments on the wording then. I guess I just want to know in terms of substance. So are you proposing adding the 8-year to the midpoint or all limits?
Right now, it was just the 8-year because it was 3-year, which is the midpoint, and then 8-year. And then because otherwise somebody's gonna be really, they're gonna be stuck at that level for the next 8 years. And so by that time, if you're here 8 years, you're pretty much committed. If you're going to,
Or should be?
or should be, but that would, you're just like two years shy of being vested in your retirement, that kind of thing. And I apologize, I thought I updated that into that packet, but I can.
So, okay, so you're adding 8, and then what is the proposal for how to handle internal?
The part-time would be, they would have to have at least been working 2 years in the position, and then they would only go to the 1-year level. Because when you are hired in, you hired in at base, and then after your 1-year anniversary, you move to the 1-year level, and then you stay at that year until
For 2
you
more
move to 3.
years.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically you're saying if they work 2 years as part-time, then they can move to if they're hired then as full-time, then move to the 1.
Yeah, I'll have her share this, Molly's gonna share her screen, and then that way you guys can see. Sorry about that.
Let me get to Ms. Hawk and then I'll get to you. Ms. Hawk, did you have any questions or as we're reviewing the language changes here?
Yeah, well, I did look for it in the packet and didn't see anything, but I will suggest that I've thought this was a problem for some time, because let's say if you have someone who's already full-time and has been full-time for say 2.5 years, and then you hire somebody else in brand new, and they start out at a higher salary than the person's already been there for 2.5 years, and probably will have to help break in this new person. There's just something very unfair about that practice. So I think there should be other ways to address this. And not only that, it seems as that every time you turn around, the department head wants to hire somebody in at that midpoint, which almost then begins to be the beginning point.
At this point, as we're looking at language changes, Ms. Turner King, do you want to take us through any of what we're seeing here? Any of the changes you recommended? And
I think the changes are everything in red, right?
Yes, yeah.
So,
okay, all right. I thought the changes were in blue.
no,
That's only her change.
hold
Yeah.
on. This is the top.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, well,
And
let me
everything's
resend
right.
that. Maybe you want to walk us through an entire document.
And I did email it to you.
Yeah. Okay, and instead of calling it a midpoint higher, if we do allow this, it would be called an increased compensation rate. So because that would include the part-time hourly as well as a 3 or an 8-year step.
Yeah. And given the policy that we adopted recently with WIS, does this then need to go to WIS for review based on how this is impacting compensation?
No, this is strictly a local decision on how you want to do hiring.
Okay.
I did reach out to WIS with regards to other counties that do an increased compensation, type of policies kind of thing. And they directed me to, and I want to say it was like Vigo County and maybe Hamilton. And I took some of their language, and that's where some of this came from. Updating it, as well as there's a new form that would accompany this resolution. So, and that form asks in detail, like the comparisons with regards to the job descriptions. It also, whereas before it was, our form is very just bare bones.
Yeah.
And this gives more detail, and that way you are comparing apples to apples, kind of thing, with regards to the job description and the position resume.
So I a couple of comments. First of all, I don't know if I like the increased compensation name for the policy. I'd call it something more like a recognition of experience policy or something like that.
Well, this is just a, a draft.
Yeah.
Working draft.
Right, but that aside, do we have a sense of how many new employees are hired? I guess, or what percentage of new hires are requested for a midpoint hire versus those who are actually hired? I guess I want to know. Councilor Hawk, commented that it seems like everybody's asking for it, but I think that's only because we only see the ones that are being asked for. And so I'm wondering really at what percentage are actually being requested midpoint versus how many are being hired.
In my opinion, I believe that job classifications in the PAC range, you're seeing that a lot. Some of the lower level classifications, you're not going to see that because those are more entry level positions. But I would say that it seems like a high percentage of those more technical positions are being requested.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, those are professional positions. I can see why we would be wanting people with more experience.
We've seen a lot, like with regards to attorneys, and you're going to be seeing one right now with regards to the surveyor, this, which is going to be coming up.
Is that the GIS?
The GIS.
Yeah, and I can imagine we don't want an entry level GIS specialist.
Right.
Our environment's too complicated.
We've had a couple with regards to the TSD, that kind of thing. So that's, the ones that we've been seeing, but I can go back and pull what we have like approved midpoint hire this past year as well as last year.
Okay. At this point, I want to ask for any public comments. Ms. Whitmer, did you want to?
Yes, while I'm here, the Parks Department, we've never asked for a mid-hire, hire, but we also assume that it's probably engineer, attorney, computer. Because I can't imagine, and we want to keep it fair, at least on our staff, because if someone comes in and says, I did my time, for a regular LTC or something of that nature. But anyway, we just assumed it's attorneys, engineers, and computer.
I mean, you were right. You have a different issue in that, like I mentioned before, you're one of the departments that has lots of a single position. And that does kind of create some equity issues that other departments may not have.
Councilmember Hawk, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, and because I have not had an opportunity to see this, wasn't in the packet. It would take me a while to make sure I understood every word. But I think what we've seen as well is that when we see people that have put in so many years whether it be part-time or full-time, and they switch over and get credit for that number of years, moving to an entirely different job field. That's something else that we need to look at. Because it makes a big difference in the budget, and also makes a big difference in the departments that want to hire somebody for full-time doing such and such job. And they have to take on the responsibility in their budget of a much higher salary, when maybe the jobs are not related.
That was one issue that we did address with regards to if a position is given a midpoint higher status, but it's only for that department and for that position. So if somebody moves on to a different department, to a different position, the midpoint higher status does not follow them.
But I think Councilor Hawk is looking more broadly than that.
Oh,
That
okay.
I think what she's referring to is not in this policy, but it's a more general problem with our compensation, which is, if somebody gave the example that if Iris Kiesling wanted to apply to be a bailiff at the, in the courts, she would start at a higher level than, say, a retired Bloomington police officer who hadn't done that work.
I think that's addressed in the policy because there's an evaluation by both council administrator and the first E. To determine if that applicant or new hire has knowledge, skills, and abilities for that position. So it's not, if you're in your example, Ms. Kiesling applied to be a bailiff, you look at her resume and say, does her knowledge, skills, and abilities transfer to that of what we would expect of a bailiff?
Well, wait, okay, let's not use Iris. Let's say one of Kelly's employees decides to apply to be the, let's say Kelly's got a maintenance tech who's been there for 20 years. Is it, close to the top level, has been there for 20 years. She decides she wants to be with the new position, Pat A, we just created for the auditor's office. That 20 years of experience, if Kelly's employee becomes that chief deputy auditor, all those 20 years of experience count, even though for compensation, even though they're utterly unrelated to the position.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that we have right now that.
We just don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah,
but I
we
think
don't have a
need to
good
fix
answer
it.
for that one. Yeah. And I don't know how we would at this point be able to fix it. When we added those extra steps, the 8 and the 14 back in, I want to say 2017-ish, council allowed everybody to have credit and it all moved forward. So, I mean, we've been doing this since at least, 2017.
Right, no, I know, that's
Yeah.
not a new thing. I just feel like we probably need to change it. I know we can't change it for existing employees.
Right,
But I think we need to, and I don't know what the right answer is, but I think maybe when we get this midpoint hire done, the next policy project ought to be figuring out how to carry over experience in a way that makes more sense.
yeah, because it would be like, we have a truck driver that's moving to a probation, or that's not a good one, but a correctional officer. He would bring his experience, even though
It's really not related.
it's
to
not
the job.
related, but because of what we're doing and what we've done in the past, it counts towards his longevity here at Monroe County.
Well, you don't promote, or people don't get a salary increase based on their knowledge, skills, and abilities. They get it based on how long they've worked here. So I think that's needs to be something that's taken into consideration too. I mean, with the current way, like you can't, the truck driver moving to whatever can't get more quality. You know what I mean? Like it's based on how long that person's worked here as to how you progress and how much money you make.
I know, it might distort departmental budgets in a way that, that the department doesn't get to benefit from all those years of experience in county government, because in this case, the job that they've done before is unrelated.
And see, and that also ties in with longevity, because, there's still a current employee.
Right, we double down on that.
We double down on that because not only are they getting it salary wise, that they don't lose anything moving as well, they still continue to receive their longevity.
Right.
So yeah, that's a Yeah.
So in terms of this discussion that's on our agenda today, it seems like you've gotten some feedback from PAC. There's a document that we haven't been able to review quite yet. And so my thought is that maybe we continue this conversation at the next PAC meeting, once PAC's been able to review this document.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that was what this was actually for anyways, just so that you guys could look at it, give us some feedback, what you like, what you don't like,
Okay.
that kind of thing.
And I imagine we'll have some more substantive feedback in another month or so.
Right, and then that'll give me a chance to give you numbers on, compared, okay, this is how many we've hired, and this is how many out of we've hired that are midpoint hires.
Wonderful.
And I'll work with you on that. So.
Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and obviously this is something we need to work on, so happy to do it. All right, let's move on to item number 7 on our agenda, which is the approval of the summary minutes as presented in the packet. Are there any changes to these minutes, PAC? Seeing none, we'll approve those. Since we have someone on Zoom, do we need to have a vote?
Yeah.
All right, let's call the roll on these minutes.
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes,
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
motion passed unanimous.
All right, the summary minutes are approved as presented. Let's move on to agenda item number 8, PAC member comments. Anybody like to make a comment on this Tuesday? Mr. McKim.
Yeah, I'm wondering, we've heard a couple of times in different venues that the airport is really having difficulties with the operations manager position, that it's probably undercompensated, and he's not able to recruit. I don't know, E, have you spoken with Carlos?
I think I've heard that.
And I'm wondering what, usually our let's see, do we know what classification that is now, what position is now?
Which position is it?
Airport operations.
assistant
Operations
director. Yeah,
It'd be operations manager.
Manager?
Yeah.
It is a Pat C.
I'm just, apparently that is I don't know what our mechanism is for possibly reviewing either the compensation classification of that, but I mean, what do we do when a department just is not able to
Well,
recruit people at that?
we've already went to WIS and they have compensated it at the levels that, you guys approved with regards to, external compensation salaries. The only thing that we can do, which we said that we weren't going to be doing that until next year, is have WIS do a desk audit, which then would require someone to, sit with and redo that job description, look at that job description again. That's where we're at right now with regards to that.
And Ms. Hawk, I see your hand.
yes, I'm the liaison for that department. So yes, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I think what we intended was that we were not going to change it in this given year. But what Carlos is asking for is to make sure that we include that higher amount for his budget for next year, not this year, but for next year, because he knows that the person holding the position now is going to be leaving. He's already been told he's going to be leaving. Now, it's important, the reason it's important that we get it included in next year's budget is because it's not in the same fund as the rest, as many of the other departments we're talking about. The airport fund is sitting out there. While it's still inside that whole frozen levy fund, it is in a separate fund of its own. So it would be difficult for us to go in there next year and put in an additional appropriation to pay someone higher when we can't loan them the money without getting it back in the same year. Is there any reason why we wouldn't at least make certain they had an opportunity to go ahead and get that included in his budget? I hope he includes it in the budget.
Michelle?
I guess I'm not understanding why he gets to change his salary with regards to one person when we have salary grids.
Right.
So are you saying that he wants to have his own salary grid with regards to aviation? And I thought that's why we went to WIS and have them do this, you know, that whole compensation analysis that we spent a lot of money on, and then trying to get rid of, you know, all of these grids.
And I might add, it's not just the airport, it's other departments who have this situation where they can't attract staff at a certain level. And
Right.
so, you know, these desks audits is one way to address this. You know, it's an issue.
Yeah, so when, you know, Marty's saying, I hope that he includes that amount in there, what is the amount that the new analysis gave? Because that's not what our salary ordinance is. So,
Mr. McKim.
I guess my thought is that I wouldn't include it in the budget. I would just make sure that we reserve it in the levy, that maybe we keep the levy a little bit higher, because I mean, we can always
Well, we
compensate.
could do that.
It's too high, you know, we can always compensate the next year. It's not, we're not losing anything. I say we just make sure we put a placeholder in the levy so that the money's there to do an additional appropriation if it all goes through the process.
okay, and that's what I'm
That
trying
works for me.
to figure out, okay, what you were trying to say there, because it's like, our salary ordinance is here,
Yeah, no,
you know, and that kind of thing.
I think we have a solution that'll give us the flexibility.
Okay, and the only other thing that I can say with regards to, because you're having trouble with this maybe particular position, is you can always take a position and make it an SO.
I know, I was thinking that's the other,
And you know,
really
which
just.
then
can't.
you go through and set that the salary for that one position.
But of course, other counties do have airports, and so I mean, there's gotta be, it is to some degree a standard position. Maybe it is underclassified, maybe it does require more skills than we think, but I
Right.
mean, there are other counties.
Ms. Hawk, go ahead.
That's kind of what I was saying. The airport is an entirely different portion of what we do. And to find, I mean, they did a study and they did it through using other airports. And so I think that that's important for us to look at. If it's not something for PAC, I really think it's more of a budgetary position. And I regret that he wasn't able to get it on that last work session, so we could have had a discussion, but I did ask for all council members to review what he had sent out. And so hopefully we've done that. And we could take that dollar amount, and as you say, Councilmember McKim, make sure that his cash carryover will be sufficient to cover any additionals we might need to make next year. Works for me.
All right, a robust PAC member comment there. Are there additional PAC member comments?
Just so that you know, I think I have Carlos on the August work session.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah, with regards to this topic.
Good,
So,
good,
yeah.
Good.
So yeah, I do have him on there.
Excellent. All right, Ms. Hawk, do you have any further statements, comments, or anything like that?
None.
All right, I don't either, so that means that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, we'll see you next month.